Hello everyone, my name is Sarathi and I'm happy to meet you all. And today we're going to be talking about the KC Cup and about all the decks that are doing really well and what we think is going to get changed moving forward. There's usually a ban list after a KC Cup, not always. And everyone is kind of sick of the current meta. It's developed very fast and it's kind of overpowering at this point. And I'll go ahead and I'll talk about what I think could happen, what maybe will happen. And I do want to preface this by saying that these are predictions. Predictions, okay? I don't make wish list videos typically. Sometimes I do, and I'll tell you if I do. But what I want to talk about is what I think will happen based on Konami's previous behavior, based on how things are performing. I don't necessarily agree with what I'm saying on a personal level. Just so you guys understand that part, let's go ahead and get started. Now, there are currently 6 decks that are performing very well, and primarily it's 2 decks that are doing really, really well, and then 4 decks that are 3 decks that kind of counter those decks, and then 1 deck that's just so powerful that if it runs into anything else, it does really well. So, let's start out with heroes. The hero deck functions entirely due to the skill Draconic Contact. It does very well primarily because Super Polymerization is an uninteractable card, and there is a structure deck that buffs it and functions it. And let's go ahead and talk about this. To start with, I will go ahead and I will tell you flatly, I do not believe that heroes are going to be changed in any way. I know that heroes are overbearing, that it feels like they've been in the meta forever, but they haven't. It's February, and this deck was released at the beginning of January. The Rainbow Dragon card came out on January 12th, which is less than a month ago. I know that if you play Duel Links every day, or you play Duel Links on the ladder, twice or 3 times a week, it feels like it's been going on forever. It hasn't. And more importantly, this is a deck that Konami wants people to buy. So you shouldn't think about heroes like you think about other meta decks that have gotten changed or that have gotten nerfed right away. This is mostly like Raging Pendulum, which was released with a deck that Konami wanted people to buy. They gave a copy to everyone for free, and then they didn't change it for like 2 or 3 KC Cups. And even then, they did very slight hit, then nerf a bunch of cards, and then finally, I think like 6 months after Raging Pendulum came out, they finally changed the skill in a meaningful way. So, if you are hoping that heroes are going to be gone after this KC Cup, it's very, very unlikely, just because they didn't make this skill by accident. They didn't make this deck by accident. They want people to enjoy playing a GX era deck because this is kind of like the end of GX for them. So don't be surprised or disappointed if nothing happens. Nothing has happened before, and nothing will continue to happen in the future, because some decks, like Konami puts a weight on some decks because they're bad, and they want those decks to see play even if the cards are bad. Okay. With that said, if Konami does nerf heroes, it's hard to tell what they would do. They're not going to limit 1 anything, because the skill directly references Super Polymerization. They could put Sunrise to 1. That's like the only thing that would make sense. They could put Elemental Hero Sunrise to 1 if they do that, because they're just like, oh, we want you to play Neos, we want you to play Rainbow Dragon, we want you to play Arm Neos, we want you to play Super Poly Heroes. We didn't say anything about Sunrise. They could do that. I don't necessarily think that would make the deck all that much better. The deck is overbearing, and Sunrise does allow you to kind of like beat through basically any board, but Arm Dragon level 10 already does that. Like Arm Dragon level 10 will just pop everything over and over until you're out of cards. So Sunrise while it does let you flood the board with, like, you know, you have Miracle Fusion, you have the ability to summon multiple monsters, like, it's a win more type of strategy. Yes, there are a lot of games that players would lose if they didn't have access to Sunrise in this list, but you don't know what the list would look like if people didn't have access to Sunrise. They'd play different cards in their extra deck, they'd have different cards in these Miracle Fusion slots. It's not necessarily an indication that the deck would be worse, just that it would play differently. Because the ability to summon Armed Dragon level 10 and Rainbow Neos are like the big draws of this deck. And neither of those cards is going to get changed because those cards are what the whole skill is about. It's also important to note that the skill was released alongside a deck. That deck involved both Crosskeeper and Necrogardna. And so for that deck to make sense, and for that skill to make sense, they will continue to use the text of the skill that says you can send a warrior from your hand to the graveyard. You can't really set up Necrogardna to go to your graveyard like you can with Crosskeeper if you don't have the ability to pitch it with the skill. Necrogardna is not a card that you can fusion. So you could make Neos Knight with it, or you could make Brave Neos with it, but that's it. And those cards are not seeing any play, and they're not part of the structure deck, so really it's like you're supposed to pitch it with the skill. So they're not going to change the skill to prevent you from discarding Necrogardna or Crosskeeper to activate it. Anyway, Sunrise to 1 could happen. More likely, I think, they can't put anything at limit 3, because if they put anything at limit 3, it conflicts with the structure deck. The structure deck gives you Necrogardna. So putting another card in the structure deck to limit 3 would hurt the deck, and like all the best cards were in that structure deck. You got Stratos, you got Liquid Soldier, Miracle Fusion was in that deck. So yeah, I don't think. Oh, Sunrise is in that box too. Yes, I really don't think that they're gonna hit Sunrise either because it was in the box. Yeah, I don't know. I guess limit 2 is like the only thing they wouldn't really care about, because Super Poly's limit 1, Necrogardna is limit 3, so maybe they'll put something to 2, maybe Liquid Soldier. Maybe they put Liquid Soldier to 2 so that you can't play Hallowed Life Barrier anymore. Or, to be honest, they could just ban Hallowed Life Barrier. They could just ban Kite Raid. They could just be sick of it at this point. That's the other thing that they could do. They could genuinely just say, you know what? We've had to balance around all these stupid stall cards for so long. They've had their time in the meta. We're just going to ban all of them. They've done some of that recently, where they just like took some cards that were really annoying, mostly in FTK sides, but stall is also something that Konami has had very little tolerance for since the very beginning of the game. They might just say, you know, we gave you these cards at the beginning when you needed them. You don't need them anymore, so we're just going to take them all away, which could potentially be their option. And if they banned all the stall cards, I think that most people would see Heroes as much less difficult to deal with. Salamangreat is different. Salamangreat is a very cool deck, and it's very popular, and it was part of a mini box that they're trying to sell, but that's not the same thing as like a structure deck. They're not putting all their eggs into this, so they could very easily make some changes to how Salamangreat functions. I don't think they're going to change the skill, just because I don't really see Konami being willing to adjust a skill so soon. And part of the reason for that is just because it's so much easier to make limit changes, because limit changes is like a flip of a switch. One thing that you guys have to understand is that when they change how a skill works, they have to translate it into every language, and then like they have to write the new skill. They have to translate it into every language, and then they have to implement it in code across and do an update. With limiting a card is something that like everyone can understand numbers. You know, numbers are much easier. Like even if the number is different in every language, you know, it's usually like 1 or 2 characters, and you just slap it on there. There's a big red sign with yellow text, and it's just very obvious. So that's just easier. than trying to change a skill, which, so I don't think that they're necessarily going to make any adjustments to Soul Burning Link, even though they probably should. Um, yeah. Instead, what I think is more likely to happen is... The problem is Salamangreats have 2 limit 1s, 1 limit 2, and a limit 3. It makes it very difficult for you to adjust anything with limitations. I wonder if they'll make it so you can't play hand traps. That would be a big change, but the deck is really an outlier. They might change the restrictions from you cannot normal or special summon monsters except Salamangreat monsters to you must play 9 Salamangreat monsters and you must not have any other monsters in your deck except Salamangreats. They've been pretty hesitant to do that recently, but when a deck is abusing hand traps as much as this one is, and it's such a power outlier, if they really want the skill to stay the same, they'll probably just say, look, we're giving you literally everything you need to win the game. You don't need to play hand traps. That might be what they do. And then, of course, if they change it so that, people can't play hand traps, they'll probably switch to, as much of a trap meta as they can. But if that's what I'm saying, the minimum number of monsters is for. It's difficult to say. Salamangreat of Fire to your hand every single game makes the deck ridiculously consistent. But I don't think that they want to get rid of that. It took them a long time to take number 90 away from McSee's Galaxy. They will probably remove Salamangreat of Fire from Soul Burning Link at some point, but I don't think it'll happen for at least 5 months. Okay. Lyrilusc is an older deck, and it's not a deck that they're really particularly concerned about keeping anymore. They've already nerfed it a couple times. The fact that it's still in the meta probably bothers them. Putting Assembled Nightingale to 1 didn't change much. So... the way I see it, there's 2 options. They could either finally be willing to change the skill, because the skill's been around for so long, and they might have already, done the translating, done the Q&A, and decided what they're going to do with it. Or they'll put Sparrow to 1. Those are your 2 options. I do think that Lyrilusc is going to be hit. I do think that they're sick of Lyrilusc at this point, and that they've made changes. Those changes haven't gone through. When they did that with Mech Knights, they came out with 4 limit 3s to kill the deck completely. So they're probably going to do that again. I think that Lyrilusc is going to get really badly hurt this time. And Cobalt Sparrow is a card that has been it's notorious. It's been limited in the TCG. I'm pretty sure it was limited in the OCG at some point. It's just a card that's really difficult to deal with. It was given to us for free for a reason, so that no one can complain if it gets taken away from us. I had the same problem with my level up cards with Yugo. So they will probably just say, look, you can play this or you can play Nightingale. That's it. And then they'll make people choose, and people will choose to play Nightingale because Nightingale is the way that you win with the deck. And then, now you can target Nightingale. So that fixes the problem. If they don't do that, I think that's probably the most likely scenario. Yeah, just put Cobalt Sparrow and Assembled Nightingale to 1. But if they don't do that, they'll change the skill. And the best way that they could change the skill would be to just remove the 3rd section altogether. So you cannot normal summon or special summon any monsters except for Lyrilusc monsters in level 1s. Reveal a Lyrilusc in your hand, send a Lyrilusc monster from your deck to the graveyard. And then you just don't. They just take the 3rd part away because it's stupid, and then you can actually play Book of Eclipse to stop the deck. That's probably what they'll do. If they don't change the cards anymore. Lyrilusc Tri-Brigade is more interesting. And Lyrilusc Tri-Brigade doing alright is kind of like an argument against them changing the bird humming skill. I think the bird humming skill is probably still a problem, but it is true that if people are able to make, Tri-Brigade Lyrilusc work, which has always been kind of a deck that people have been able to make work, then that raises some questions. Obviously, Avaricious Avians has a lot of synergy with Tri-Brigades, which is interesting. They probably do need to, at some point, realize that returning banished cards is stupid. They shouldn't do that. The skill being like a miniature Pot of Avarice is pretty cool, but Pot of Avarice is limited, Pot of Avarice is limited to the graveyard for a reason. Doing it to the to the banished zone is a little toxic. So yes, I would go ahead and say that at some point they will, but the problem is, if they do that for this skill, they're going to do it for every skill that's like this, which would take them forever. So they'll probably do that at some point, but not right now. Instead, Lyrilusc has a bunch of limits. So if they have a problem with Tri-Brigades and Lyrilusc being combined, then they'll just limit some of the Tri-Brigade cards. And the easiest thing to do would just be to put Fractal to 3. You put Fractal to 3, then you can either play 3 Fractals, or you can play 2 Fractals and 1 Barrel Canary, or you can play 1 Fractal and 2 Barrel Canaries, and that just makes the deck way less consistent. And the main benefit of playing Tri-Brigades is how consistent they are, especially with Fractal. So, yeah, that's probably what they'll do. Crystal Beasts. Will Konami hit Crystal Beasts? Probably not. Again, the deck is very new. This is like probably the only real time they can drum up, sales and interest in Crystal Beasts forever. They don't have any more cards to release at this point, except for Snake Eyes Doom Dragon, which is not going to come out for like 6 years. So if they want anyone to be excited about Crystal Beasts, unless they release Advanced Crystal Beasts, which would have to have like a ridiculously powerful skill. But if they don't want to release Advanced Crystal Beasts, this is like the only chance that they have to make this archetype fun and playable and interesting for the rest of Duel Links. So I feel like they'll want to let the Crystal Beast players ride their high for a little bit longer. Yeah, you know what? I'm not even gonna say, here's what Konami would do. I don't think they're gonna do anything. I think Crystal Beast gets left alone. And then Predaplants. Predaplants is getting a ton of tops still. Let's see. Mind control, really. Is that a trend? Let me see. I am not in the tournament scene. That is a lot of mind control. Okay. Mind control is a problem. Don't know why they ever gave it to us. Konami's not going to tolerate this. So I would say Saraceniant to limit 3. Yeah. They'll say, you know what? You got this nonsense that you're doing when you're going second. How about we just make it so that you are much less likely to live if you go first then. You want to play your mind control? Fine. You got no hand traps, no protection. So yeah, Saraceniant till 3 conflicts with mind control. Then you can either be safe going first, or you cannot be safe going first. And I might say, our skill is so much better going second that we just don't care. We're just going to play mind control and make sure that we always win going second. Which, fair. That could be your decision. But since you can't play blind seconds in this game, that will drop the win rate substantially. So yeah, cool. All right, that's what I think. So let me know what you guys think in the comments below. My name is Sarafi, and I was thrilled to have all of you with me.